What's up, guys? Chris here with Cohesive Friendship Unit. Just me today. A few years back, there were a lot of rumors that the next-gen Xbox was actually going to be two Xboxes, the Xbox Lockhart model and what we learned to be the Xbox Scarlet model. But as we learned about the Scarlet model and eventually the Xbox Series X, we kind of forgot about Lockhart. And rumors are starting to pick up about Lockhart again, and with the Xbox Series X looking to be pretty impressive from a spec standpoint, it's pretty much guaranteed to cost more than that magic $500 sweet spot based on all the AMD testing leaks, as well as a few other things that have already been just touted, like ray tracing, and the fact that this is even called the Xbox Series X from and by Phil Spencer unofficially. That kind of is leaving a lot of people to think that, okay, so Lockhart's back, and Lockhart is going to be the Xbox Series S, where we had the Xbox One X and the Xbox One S. Now we are going to be launching with the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. And we're going to talk all about that Series S and what we know. But before we do, we are doing a giveaway. Giving away a copy of Risk of Rain 2. All you got to do is be subscribed at 2,250 subs. We pick a random sub, and you can get that game on your platform of choice. We talk a lot about the game, and we love Risk of Rain 2. So if you love us, sub us. Check out our community tab for more info on that. And if you like the video, throw us a like. There are three big things I want to talk about for the Xbox Series S. The first are the specs. The second is the possibility of it being all digital, and the third is the dual launch. So let's start with the specs. When you hear me go through these at first, you're going to think, wow, this basically sounds worse than the Xbox One X, but I'm going to try to explain why that's not the case, and this is actually a pretty compelling piece of hardware for you to maybe think about. So on the specs, we are looking at an 8-core, 16-thread Zen CPU, 12 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD, and 4 teraflop GPU, roughly, a little over 4 teraflops. So just for comparison's sake, let's talk about the Xbox One X a little bit, and then we'll start to connect some dots. So the Xbox One X has a Jaguar CPU, but it is also an 8-core CPU. So core count is the same. Also similar amount of RAM between the two. And finally, same amount of storage. Actually, you can get 2 terabyte Xbox One X's, but not the SSD. And the Xbox One X was always touting that it had a 6 teraflop GPU. So what gives? Why wouldn't I just get an Xbox One X, and why won't Xbox One X work on all Xbox Series S and X games? The secret sauce there is really the CPU. Zen, the AMD CPU, is a huge enhancement over the Jaguar CPU. This gen, the CPUs were largely the limiting reagent for games advancing. That was definitely the thing that was holding things back. And Ryzen CPUs are just leaps and bounds, like multiple generations better than these Jaguar CPUs in the current boxes. This is what is really going to make the next-gen games sing. This is what's going to give you your more complicated worlds, your more ambitious games that cannot run or wouldn't run as well on older hardware. So while the CPU clock speed and core count may look the same on paper across the two consoles, it's not the case. It is, in fact, a much better CPU, and that's really the secret sauce. That and the SSD. The SSD in this case is not only an SSD, but it's a super fast SSD that Microsoft is basically promising will eliminate load times or near eliminate load times. That's part of the gimmick for both PS5 and Xbox Series X right now, is that load times will be severely diminished Also, there are thoughts of putting games in sort of a sleep mode so you can wake them up almost instantly, among a few other things where there's talks about potentially, again, all this marketing jargon pre-console launch sometimes doesn't work out. Remember Crackdown 3 and the cloud computing. But there are rumors that maybe we can use this SSD as essentially slow RAM and offload some stuff onto that SSD. Now, right now, the Xbox One Series X hard drive is nothing really to brag about. So yeah, this would give you not only the benefits in games on the CPU front, but also the benefits in load times and potentially performance that would allow you to run these new experiences. Now let's talk about that 4 teraflop GPU. Again, the Series X had a 6 teraflop GPU. This is pretty much sitting in line with about the PS4 Pro's GPU. And what's interesting about this is the PS5 is kind of rumored right now to be about a 9 teraflop GPU. So here we have this Xbox Series S GPU actually sitting not only below the PS4 or PS5, but it's sitting below the Xbox One X and right around the PS4 Pro's level of performance. And what that means exactly is that this is going to operate at around the 1440p mark, right? The PS4 Pro actually does a pretty good job at putting out 1440p fairly frequently, and with things like checkerboarding, you can kind of fake a 4K image, or you can display a 4K image, but not native 4K. And that's kind of what this system is going to be geared for. This is going to be the more budget system where you'll be running things at 1080p and up to 1440p, maybe even faking a 4K image, and your games are going to still look great, but that's the resolution target where the Series X is going to be targeting 4K right out of the gate. So that's why the GPU is less than the Series X, because that 6 teraflop GPU was trying to push 4K. This console, while it will probably be streaming at 4K no problem, isn't trying to play games at 4K, and that's just something to keep in mind. Basically, this is a huge improvement over an Xbox One S's GPU, and that's what's important. And that's kind of where we're at from the specs. So yeah, that should explain to you why you shouldn't just go buy an Xbox One X and be mad that it's cheaper and has 2 better teraflops. That's the last thing I want to say, is that even looking at these numbers, teraflops don't mean everything, and the 4 teraflop GPU will definitely be doing the job at these lower resolutions that this console is targeting. Next, I want to talk about the all-digital nature and why I think that might not necessarily be the case anymore. So there's rumors that this Series S console is going to be an all-digital console, and there are a couple of reasons why I think it could still be an all-digital console and a couple of reasons why I think it will not be an all-digital console. I'm going to start with the nots, and the key thing was the Xbox One SAD edition. The Xbox One S all-digital edition, that launched in 2019, kind of out of nowhere. There have been teardowns of it. It is literally just an Xbox One S with no disk drive. That's the only thing that's different about it, and it was hardly giving you any savings. It was met with pretty extreme critical reception, and to my knowledge, I've never seen any positive things about how well it's selling. It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Not a lot of people liked it. I do remember being at Walmart one time, and the only Xbox left, this was around the holidays, was a SAD edition, and the mom said, yeah, sure, I'll buy that one. But that was literally the last option. So yeah, that reception from Microsoft, I kind of have a feeling that they might have pushed that Xbox out to seed the idea of an all-digital console and see if people were ready for it, and I think the answer was no, we're not ready quite yet for that. Also, it could hurt your reputation with retailers, places like Best Buy and GameStop that carry your consoles. Ultimately, you go into a Best Buy, most people don't go into a Microsoft store to buy an Xbox. Most people go into these other retailers, and you want to be able to sell other physical goods, other third-party games and accessories, mostly games though, for these consoles. And if you are making the primary system, the Series S, the only one, the one that most people are going to buy, if you're making that system the one without a disk drive, that means physical game sales will go down, and that hurts your rapport with retail partners. So that's another reason why I think we will be seeing a disk drive. Basically, don't want to hurt your reputation with retailers, especially where Microsoft is kind of poised to make a comeback. I think a lot of people are rooting for that, and they know that they can't mess this generation up. So playing it safe is another big reason. And the third, I think that Xbox One S All Digital Edition really didn't sit well, and that was almost a test. And now that they know that that's not really, we're not there yet, that they will put a disk drive in. Reasons to not have a disk drive, I can think of a couple of greedy reasons. One, it's cheaper for sure. Two, you can cram more stuff into the box if you need to. And three, perhaps the most important and most money related, these 1 terabyte SSDs are not going to be cheap, and Microsoft could pretty easily make them proprietary or proprietary-esque, or make it strongly incentivized that you have to buy the Microsoft one, or it'll be a huge pain to replace. And these SSDs are not going to be cheap. A 1 terabyte SSD is not inexpensive, and making it super fast, I assume it'll be M.2 or something even faster, is even more expensive. So that's a good reason to force people to download all their games, because a terabyte is not going to be a lot. You look at Red Dead Redemption right now on the current generation, that's over 100 gigabytes. So you could have 10 games of this generation. I mean, big games, yeah, but let's project out and say it's not unreasonable to say a game ultimately becomes 200 gigabytes. So your Series S is only going to be able to hold 5 games, and 3 years down the line, yeah, they're going to want to be selling you these expensive SSDs. That's a reason why I think that it could still end up being all digital. And the last thing I want to talk about is the dual launch of the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X. At this point, the Xbox Series X is more and more expensive, pretty much. Every time a leak comes out and this thing looks more and more impressive, things like real-time ray tracing, things like 4K, things like 12 teraflops from AMD testing, these are all indicators that this is not going to be a cheap console. Even just looking at the name, the Xbox Series X correlates it to the Xbox One X, right? This is the premium console. This is the elite console. This is the high end, and that is likely going to go over the $500 mark, if not strictly hit the $500 mark. And I think Microsoft learned a lesson in the last generation, where the Xbox One came out at $500 and forced you to have a Kinect. But it came out at $500, and the PS4 came out $100 less at $400. And I mean, among all the other problems with the launch of the Xbox One, that really hurt them coming out. I think this is a way to diversify your portfolio in the best way. You can launch with maybe a $600 console that the real hardcore are going to want to buy, and that they will buy easily. And then you can make more money off of those initial sales. And then you ultimately get to say you sold more Xboxes. And you launch with this Series S, maybe at a $400 price point. And that gives consumers a choice, which is always a good thing. It gives people possible reasons to buy another one later if you launch them both at the same time. Maybe somebody upgrades faster than they think. Maybe they upgrade in a year, gives more products to upgrade to, and it's just a generally good way to kind of shotgun the price market of consoles. So if they're not entirely sure if the PS5 is going to be $500, $400, $350, whatever, $600, they are positioned in 2 footholds of the market instead of just 1. And those are kind of all the things that we know on the Xbox One Series S. Let me know if you liked the video, guys. I will catch you next time.